A young man stands ankle deep in the water of a lake in Galilee, mending a torn net with fingers rough from salt and rope. The sun has not yet cleared the hills. His name is Simon. If you had watched him that morning, you would have seen nothing remarkable, just another fisherman starting another ordinary day. Nobody watching him would guess that one day, on a hill across the sea, he will die hanging upside down by his own request. We will get there, but not yet. This is not a story about a gifted fisherman. This is not a story about a natural-born leader. This is not a story about a man who got everything right. This is a story about a man who kept failing and kept being called back anyway. And if you have ever wondered whether your own failures disqualify you from something bigger, this is a story you need to hear all the way through. Simon was born in a village called Bethsaida, on the edge of the Sea of Galilee. He grew up the way most boys there grew up: nets, boats, salt, and silence before dawn. He married. He built a life that looked exactly like every other fisherman's life around him. You would not have picked him out of a crowd. Then his younger brother Andrew came running with news. Andrew had been following a preacher named John by the Jordan River, and John had pointed at a man walking by and said, "Look, the Lamb of God." Andrew followed that man for a day, and when he found Simon, he said one sentence that changed everything. "We have found the Messiah." He brought Simon to Jesus, and Jesus looked at him, really looked at him, and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas." Cephas in Aramaic, Petros in Greek. Both words mean the same thing: rock. Not because Simon was steady. He was anything but steady. Jesus was not naming what Simon already was. He was naming what Simon would become. Here's what most people miss about Simon's calling. It didn't happen once. It happened 3 times because Simon kept needing convincing. The first time came after a night of nothing. Simon and his crew had fished all night on this same lake and caught not one fish. Empty nets, empty hands. Then Jesus stepped into his boat and told him to push out into deep water and try again. Simon was tired and skeptical and probably a little annoyed, but he did it anyway. And the nets came up so full of fish that the boat began to sink. Simon did not celebrate. He fell to his knees in the bottom of that sinking boat and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." That was Simon's first instinct in front of real power. Not pride, but shame. But it gets stranger. Later, walking a dusty road near Caesarea Philippi, Jesus turned to his followers and asked them a question that had nothing to do with fishing. "Who do you say I am?" Everyone else stayed quiet. Simon didn't. "You are the Christ," he said, "the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him with the words that would define the rest of his life. "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." The same man who had just been fishing for his dinner was now being told he would carry the weight of something eternal. Stay with me, because the very next chapter of his life proves he was nowhere near ready for that weight. On a stormy night on that same lake, the disciples saw Jesus walking toward them on the water. Peter, impulsive, always the one to speak first, act first, called out, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus said one word, "Come." And Peter climbed out of the boat. He walked on water. For a few steps, gravity simply did not apply to him. Then he looked at the wind. He looked at the waves, and he began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried out. Jesus caught him by the hand and asked him, "Why did you doubt?" That question would follow Peter for the rest of his life. maybe it follows you too. And this is where it gets remarkable, because the lowest moment of Peter's life happened on the same night as the highest promises he had ever made. Hours before Jesus was arrested, Peter told him with total confidence, "Even if everyone else falls away, I never will." He meant it. But that same night, in a courtyard lit by a small fire, 3 different people asked Peter if he knew Jesus. 3 times he said no. "I don't know the man." The 3rd time, he cursed to make it convincing. And in that exact moment, Luke tells us, Jesus turned and looked straight at Peter. Not with rage, just a look. Peter went outside and he wept bitterly. This is not a footnote in Peter's story. This is not a minor stumble we skip past to get to the good part. This is not something the gospel writers tried to hide or soften. This is the center of who Peter was. A man who loved Jesus with his whole chest and still failed him completely when it mattered most. If you have ever done that to someone you love, you already understand exactly what that walk out of the courtyard felt like. Here's the part nobody tells you. Jesus never brought it up first. After the resurrection, by that same lake where it all began, Jesus cooked breakfast for his disciples on the shore. And then he turned to Peter and asked him a question 3 times, matching the 3 denials. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" In the original Greek, the first 2 times, Jesus used the word agape, the deep, sacrificial kind of love. Both times, Peter answered with a smaller word, phileo, the love of a close friend, as if he no longer trusted himself to claim the bigger one. The 3rd time, Jesus lowered the question to meet him. He used phileo too. And Peter, hurt that he'd been asked a 3rd time, said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus didn't ask for a perfect answer. He asked for an honest one. And with each answer, he gave Peter the same command: "Feed my sheep." The man who denied him 3 times was being handed responsibility 3 times. That is not how you and I usually run things. That is how grace runs things. There's one more thing Peter had to do before this story is finished. He had to lead. Weeks later, in Jerusalem, at the Jewish feast of Pentecost, Peter stood up in front of a crowd. The same man who couldn't face a servant girl by a fire, and preached about Jesus to thousands of strangers. About 3,000 people were baptized that day. This was not a different Peter. This was the same Peter, still impulsive, still imperfect, now simply pointed in the right direction. Years after that, Peter did something even his own people would have found scandalous. He went to the house of a Roman centurion named Cornelius, a Gentile, an outsider, a man the Jewish law would have told him to avoid, and he baptized his entire household. The gospel that had started with 12 Jewish fishermen was now reaching the whole world, and Peter was the one who opened that door. Herod Agrippa later threw Peter in prison and planned to execute him. An angel woke him in the middle of the night and walked him past the guards, and the chains simply fell off his wrists. Peter walked out a free man, still not entirely sure it wasn't a dream, but the final chapter of his life is the one this whole story has been walking toward. According to the early church historian Eusebius, Peter was arrested again, decades later, in Rome, under the Emperor Nero. He was sentenced to die the same way Jesus had died, on a cross. And Peter asked for one thing: to be crucified upside down. Not because he was trying to make a statement, because he did not believe he deserved to die the same way his Lord had died. That fisherman from Bethsaida, the one who sank in the water, who denied Christ 3 times, who needed to be asked, "Do you love me?" 3 separate times before he could believe he was forgiven, became the rock the church was built on. So here is what this story leaves you with. First, Jesus doesn't call the finished version of you. He calls the version standing in front of him right now. Second, your worst moment is never the final word on your life. And third, the one that should stay with you longest, the same voice that looked at Peter across a courtyard fire, after everything he had done, still said, "Feed my sheep." Which moment in Peter's life hit you the hardest? The sinking on the water, the denial by the fire, or the restoration on the beach? Tell me below. He was not chosen because he was strong. He was chosen because he kept coming back, and so can you.